It's November 28th, 2022. There is a strange occurrence today outside the residence. Um it arrived there was a truck that arrived last night sitting just in front. It has a big orange cone on the top of it. And I saw there was a gentleman in the whatever. When asked, he said he's with Con Ed. I'm like, again, it's such a strange thing because I'm like, on the one hand, Con Ed has Con Ed trucks. Just like on Yellowstone, how Yellowstone has Dunton Yellowstone, like the ranch, on the trucks with the symbol. Con Ed comes with trucks like that normally. Apparently, they sent some, it says Navigator, although the Lincoln symbol was taken off the truck and it's black. I'm like, that's interesting. License plate was no numbers that I recognize um, in reading or gleaming the cube or whatever. And then it has two fog lights with metal cages on them that say KC. And I'm like, now that's interesting. It's missing the N in one set of circumstances, or N in the age. I'm like, what does KC refer to? And so he's been sitting outside since yesterday, waiting for traffic to move on the street to put out orange cones. And I'm like, this is an odd whatever. I mean, like, no word from Con Ed that they were going to be closing the street or that they were going to be working on the street. Just some guy in a black truck shows up. KC on the cages, doing I don't know what, but he's been out there since yesterday. So we're going on over 24 hours. I'm like, maybe worth a mention, just since there's no communication from Con Ed, and that's part of utility around here. I've documented some of the metallurgy from the street for my own whatever. In my own like recon of the surrounding whatevers. I have no idea. Like, and then I'm thinking about my conversation today about black holes that I heard on the radio that they're still talking about. So I know it's a thing. It's not just like a trendy thing, it seems to be. And then I'm like, right, they would have had to have a model behind the fundamentals of technology before they can write code or source code in this area, being the USA and North America. So that's interesting for the investments and private equity and public knowledge or the lack thereof. Lewis said he was contacted by somebody today who had some kind of algorithm and technology allowance. She owns some form of technology. I'm like, well, isn't that interesting? How are people owning technology in a vacuum, which is what the internet space technically kind of sort of is, in an undefined way? And how do you bring definition, which then brings law and order, which then brings investment and interest, which then makes a market and a sellable product for which to build a business model off of? I'm just curious, when I know for this particular place that I arrived, that I bring definition to time and space, for which 2 points in a vacuum is can be definable, and then from there, all else can be built. But without those two definable points in space and time, you have nothing. I had a star brother I was delivered or born with. That was, I thought, the beginnings of our partnership with man before the next set of hands arrived for like escalator and horseshoes on the same escalator for our part of the zodiac or the whatever, just so we have definable whatever since we were children. What I'm confused about is why, again, the formality of hummingbird and flower was somehow withheld from my ability to get to, but yet everybody seems to be prospering off of this technology, and I'm part of the model. I'm part of the model that then practical science is built off of and taught in formal institutions, which people enjoy. They build industry, they build career, they build satellites, they build source code, they build all sorts of stuff. And I have a stake in that just by my arrival and the special timing technique for which I can clearly define. And there is order amongst life on this planet. It is sequenced in such a manner in the larger matrix that holds solar system, galactic, and like planetary management. What I lack is the level of intelligence in order to speak to ask, where is my hummingbird? He did not arrive in 1976 nor 1975 for the two Pythie whatever that, I mean, it feels like they took the leading man from the leading role in my life and purposely withheld him. That's what it feels like. I don't know if it was for jealousy of something that somebody else was born without. I mean, if I'm thinking human logic and human intellect and the shallow pool of possibilities onto why would anybody want to keep a hummingbird from a flower? Seriously. Makes no sense. And I know I've been in time and space where he exists. It's just this loop of this sequence I keep waking up in, that now this child exists and we coexist on this planet together. And still the hummingbird is not with us, or the one that I was built into the section for. And it was gone over almost like set director and executive on the scene of this specific part of coexistence with humanity. It was already spoken of at one point, because there are a whole lot. I mean, I'm part of the model. It's undeniable because it's indisputable. There is a lineage and there's a time sequence when nothing else exists, for which in quantifiable and in string terms and human, like Calcanious to calculus, it's important. So the neglect part and the withholding a hummingbird from a flower is where I'm still having a problem, because the insults to my intelligence is not just a national security concern, it's a global concern, it's a lifelong concern, and it's an ongoing concern. I don't consider Teofria 1975 as anything important. Not ever. He's not a hummingbird. He's not who I belong with. He's not who I was built for. And I don't ride an escalator with him. When this whatever is over, and since 2010, I would have never thought of him. If he just disappeared and went about his way and coexisted with somebody else and became somebody else's whatever, I would have been better off. The children would have been better off, and I would have never put two thoughts into him ever again. But here we are. And I don't know why I can't get this Blacksmith Productions unseated and moved out. This is just, and where do you lodge that level of complaint? I'm just curious. I heard on the news the other night, you need a lodge is what one of the recommendations was in like I'm listening to the back noise, the backdrop, the back noise, and I'm like, that sounds Canadian. That sounds like a cabin in the woods Canadian like romantic scene. The word lodge, because in New York it doesn't seem to have that coziness. I mean, maybe by Highmark standards, but not in the area for which I am, just outside of New York. So anyway, so that's real life. I don't know why there's a black truck with a cone. He said something about Con Ed. He didn't go into detail. I have no idea how to even check that. I don't know what like standard level of operation is, like what's going on kind of a thing. Where do you check that? Who do you check with? So confusing. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361. And again, when you're part of somebody's practical, scientifically proven method that then they've made trillions off of, how do you say, excuse me, the model is being abused and neglected, and yet the world is conducting in some manner as if the model itself didn't exist? How do you trace those lines of reality amongst humanity in this 20th century or 21st century or the second millennia, being that I arrived in 19th millennia or the first millennia, 900th century, whatever, 19th century, before the Y2K problem? Where do you ask that level of inquiry